The following podcast may contain adult language and an abundance of spoilers. So get ready, nerds, because we're talking 2021's Dune. Welcome, everybody, and thank you so much for joining us on another episode of the Salty Nerd Podcast. Today, we're talking about the new 2021 Dune movie that we all got to see in theaters the other day. It was a great experience. I'm joined, as always, by my fantastic panel of nerds, starting with Jude.
Hello.
How are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. You were at the theater with us.
I was.
Tom was there as well.
Uh-huh.
Did you have fun?
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, I did.
Good. All right. And the Barbarian Space Viking, Matt Vader 74. What's up, dude?
Hey man, how are you?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm good.
You were not at the theater.
I
with
was
us.
not. I was at home.
How dare you?
I was in Yellowstone National Park.
Oh, that's right.
He was like, I spend too much time with you guys.
Yeah.
I'm going to this by myself.
I had to get out of the desert and go to like mountains and shit.
I feel that. Also here, frustrated producer of the show, Matt Kadish. Welcome, sir.
So I've seen this movie 4 times now.
Oh my God.
In full disclosures, twice in the theater, twice at home. The other night I went and saw it in the theater in IMAX. And then when I came home, Jude was watching it. So I literally watched it back to back, like twice in a row.
I had plans and couldn't go to the theater with him. And I was like, when I got home a little early. I was like, fuck them. I'm going to watch that shit right now.
I tell you, I love these same day, like streaming and theater releases.
Uh-huh.
Like it's just, I think every studio should do that.
It's like the best of both worlds.
The
Go to the theater and watch it, and then come home and rewatch it again.
I wanted to see if I liked it as much from my couch as I did in the theater.
Well, one of the things that we did is, so in the theater, the sound is so loud you can't hear the dialogue with a lot of the characters. So when I got home, I put on the subtitles so that I could actually see what people were saying because I couldn't understand what they were saying in the theater.
this
Good old Hans Zimmer.
This movie isn't worth seeing 4 times in a weekend.
Oh, we're gonna get the all right. Before
Absolutely not.
Salt, blow it.
before we dump into a
The
pool of
salt
salt,
must flow.
we're gonna take a quick break. We'll be right back, and we're gonna get into a spoiler review of this movie. Welcome back, everybody. Hey, if you love what we do here and you tune in every single week, go to saltynerdclub.com and become a club member. That is where you are going to get our most raw, unfiltered selves, where we do extra shows. We get 4 podcasts every single month just for the club members. We have a ton of fun with our community over there on Discord as well. So consider joining us. And you guys get a backlog of like 2 years worth of content that we have on Patreon. So join us, join the club, help support us so that we can do this full time and make awesome content for you. All right. Dune. Jude. Do you have the synopsis?
I do.
Take it away.
All right. 2021 Dune, rated PG-13 with a runtime of 2 hours, 35 minutes. This had a budget of $165 million. What do you think it brought in its first weekend?
Opening weekend? Mm-hmm. I'm going to say it made its budget, 160, I'll say, for the opening weekend.
V?
I saw a number out there somewhere around, they're estimating 200.
Okay. Kadish, do you know?
Yes.
Then you probably know if I'm wrong or not, because I got 40 million its first weekend.
But for the U.S.
That's all I could find was the U.S.
220 million worldwide.
Okay, well,
Nice.
good for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been out like in Europe and stuff like that, like weeks
That's
ahead of time.
right. It went out early. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, my Google was faulted.
Your Duke skills
learn
need
My
to
Duke
be.
skills need improvement.
Learn to Google, Jude. Come on.
Fuck you, Vader. All right.
Okay.
So,
He's like, if you insist.
we're going to take a quick break so me and Vader can fuck.
Sorry, Matt. You're done. I'm divorced and you're canceled. Okay.
All right. So the Emperor doles out responsibilities to honored houses. The Atreides rule in Caladan, a paradise planet. The Harkonnen rule on Arrakis, the home of the universe's only source of spice, a drug that makes space travel possible, extends life, and gives psychic abilities. The two houses have a long-standing feud. As a ploy to have the up-and-coming powerful Atreides family killed, the Emperor instructs the Duke Atreides to leave his home planet and become the warden of Arrakis, knowing that the Harkonnens won't give up control easily. The Harkonnens don't appreciate being replaced and wage war against the family. Jessica, a Bene Gesserit, and her son Paul Atreides, the Duke's son, get abducted and left for dead in the desert. But what the Harkonnens don't expect is that the desert people, the Fremen, believe Paul to be the Kwisatz Haderach, the Messiah that will bring a holy war to the Empire. They take Paul and Jessica in and give them refuge from the deadly planet.
And
So I've only seen the David Lynch, like maybe half of that movie. And
that's
oh,
more than enough.
So you got to see this whole movie in half of the David Lynch movie.
Yeah. I had a great time with this movie.
I loved it. It was the greatest 2.5 hour prologue I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Movie in my life.
I'll tell you, when the opening scene came up and it said the title, it says Dune, and you got this Hans Zimmer freaking boom music going on. I'm watching, I'm like, all right, I'm in. And then it says part 1. And I'm like, shit. Dang it, man. Like, that's worse than seeing To Be Continued at the end of a sitcom. It's just like, God dang it, dude. I was so pissed. I had no idea. I went in completely blind on this movie. I think I might have watched one trailer. It might have been with you guys. I went completely blind into this. I had no idea what I was getting into.
The scale here is
epic.
it's
incredible visually.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good movie. But I can't. I'm having a really hard time saying that I like it because it's not complete.
Yeah. It's hard to say.
The second half isn't even made.
Yeah.
I'm getting...
It's greenlit.
Did it finally get greenlit?
In 3 years, we might see it.
Well, that's fine. It's not fine for you millennials, but for us old people who are used to waiting for 3 or 4 years between movies, it's not that big a deal.
Okay. So you didn't... What was it that's keeping you from saying that you liked it? Just because it's not a complete story?
Because it's not a complete story.
Okay. It's all just set up.
It's like watching... You know, there's not even a beginning, middle, and end. There's just a beginning and the start of the middle. So, I mean, at least in most movies that are like trilogies, each movie is contained.
Mm-hmm.
This movie is not. This is just part of a story. If we never got part 2 to this movie, if it never gets made, I will probably never want to watch it again because it just blocks. It's just such a harsh stop. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I know exactly what you're saying.
And
It's a heartbreaker.
It sucks.
Okay.
And I feel like I'm going to have to wait 3 years before I can actually give this movie an actual grade. So, I mean, it's beautiful. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah,
it's a gorgeous movie. It's like the Lynch movie remade with modern technology, because that's what it is.
Yeah. Jude?
Yes.
Opening thoughts. What did you think about this?
I really enjoyed it. I've been looking forward to this for a long time.
You're a book reader, right?
Of course.
Okay.
And I think I read the book twice. And I've read a lot about it, and I went down a rabbit hole as far as like other people talking about the book, and like I love this book. And like we've talked about like how I read Foundation and I hate the show. I read Foundation, but I didn't love it, but I know it. And so that was why I was like so mad about the show. So it was really hard for me. But with this, like I fucking love this book, and it's epic and it's beautifully written, and the characters are so well developed. And like, I love like just the characters that they're just so different from each other, and they're just really well rounded. I love that. They're really rich and they all have a lot of layers. And I feel like this did a really good job of capturing the essence of the book. They left a lot out, but I knew that they had to. This is a big book, and it's an epic story, and it's not just a story about this planet. It's a story about an entire universe, so in like a galaxy. So I got that they were going to have to leave a lot out. So there are some things that I wish that they had kept in, but overall, I thought they did a great job with it. Denis Villeneuve. I felt like had his finger on the pulse of it. I thought the casting was really good. I really enjoyed Timothy Chalamet.
That's Paul.
Chalamet.
Okay, I knew it.
A lot of French names.
Yeah.
I thought that he was very well cast. Like the character of Paul is supposed to be a young boy, and in the Lynch version, you've got Kyle MacLachlan, who I felt like just looked too old for the role, as well as Shawnee was played by Sean Young. And I was just like, she doesn't fit this character at all. And it really took me out of it. Not to mention, like, the movie is an abortion. But
damn.
It made me want to kill myself.
The David Lynch movie?
Yeah.
Wow.
I watched it in the bathtub. I could have easily ended things. But no, I thought that the casting was really good with this. And like, while I was watching this, like I like all of these people who are playing these characters, but I was still invested in the story, where I wasn't thinking like, oh, that's Dave Bautista, that's Jason Momoa. I was just like following the story, and I think it was they did a really good job.
I think you bring up a good point. Like, we know all of these actors in this movie. Like these are very, very like AAA actors. And I didn't for a second feel like I was watching the actor during this movie.
That wasn't Vito Voss.
As opposed to like
Poe Dameron.
like Tom Cruise or something. Yeah, it wasn't Poe Dameron. God, I'm sure he wants to forget that role too. It wasn't Thanos, it wasn't like I could see through, or Tom Cruise when I'm watching like a Mission Impossible movie.
But
it's just Tom Cruise.
I do have to say, every time he opens his mouth, I just hear Thanos.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what movie he's in. I hear Thanos.
He had a really good monologue in this movie when he was doing the fight scene. Kadish, give us your opening thoughts, bud. You said you love this movie.
No, I don't love this movie. I love the idea of this movie.
Oh, okay.
I thought that it's well cast. It's visually incredible. But it is, I have mixed feelings about it. So first of all, I know I'm alone on this hill, but I love the David Lynch Dune.
You are a crazy person.
You're not alone, sir. You're not alone at all.
In this room, I think he's alone.
No, he's not.
Do you like the David Lynch movie?
I like the David Lynch movie too.
Guys are on crack.
Yeah, I mean, like, I realize I'm in the minority in that opinion. Even David Lynch doesn't like the David Lynch Dune, and that's because he didn't have Final Cut, and the studio came in and meddled it a lot. But last night I sat down and watched the David Lynch version of Dune before I went to bed, and it does such a better job of telling the whole story, but also setting up the world of Dune and like what everything is and the political landscape and stuff like that. And I know that was the studio saying like, Lynch, your movie is nonsensical, so we have to put stuff in here to have it make sense. And when I was watching the Villeneuve Dune, one of the things that struck me was just how choppy it was. Like you could tell that, I think that the initial cut of this movie was 4.5 hours, and you can tell that they just like cut out so much stuff to hit that hour or 2.5 hour runtime for the theaters. It just felt like so much stuff was left out of this movie, which needed to be there. And when I walked out of the theater, I was like, this really should have been an HBO miniseries. This should have been something that HBO had like episodes of that they released, on HBO Max. This shouldn't have been a theatrical release, in my opinion, because so much stuff needed to be set up. I feel like this movie, even though it's beautiful, it's very inaccessible to people who aren't familiar with the books. In fact, the second time I went to see it in theater, I went with a friend of mine who's a film professor. He teaches filmmaking at the local college out here in Southern Nevada, and he'd never read the book, and he just came out and he was like, what the fuck was this? What the fuck was that? How did this happen? Like he's like, why are people fighting with swords? He's like, where are all the laser guns? And like I had to explain to him, it's like, well, in this world, because of shield technology, you can't use laser guns, and that means that you have to use your.
Well, I thought that was set up fairly well in that little fight scene between.
Apparently not. Because like
I'm smarter than a college kid.
well, it's just one of those things like when you have like the big like Harkonnen invasion later on, it's just like, why aren't people using like laser guns? And all this stuff is set up in the book. And I think that they probably filmed the explanations for it for this movie, but they decided to take it out for the theatrical release. And it's one of those things where it's the same issue with Batman versus Superman and Justice League, where they had to hit that 2.5 hour runtime because that's like the maximum amount you can of length that you can make a movie in order to actually make a profit in the theaters. If you go to 3 hours, like it's just proven that you're cutting down the number of showings that you can have. And so you're not going to make as much money. And with like Batman versus pretty much any Zack Snyder movie, if I'm being honest here.
Here we go.
Like the whole thing is that this movie needed more time to tell its story, and it's only telling half the story. And even then it needed more time. And so I feel like because it felt so choppy and it didn't do any world building that was like necessary for people who aren't familiar with the books, that it's actually not as good of a movie. Like I think it's getting praise that it doesn't deserve simply because people have been waiting for this movie for a long time. It's a very kind of beautiful adaptation of the film or of the book. But I feel like it's overrated right now, in my opinion.
So going in cold, I've attempted to read the book probably 2 or 3 times, and I'm like, what just happened? It's taken me a while. I might go back and try again. Yeah, it's a lot. I might go back and try it again after this movie came out. Maybe give me more context for what's going on in the story. But going in cold, I didn't think the laser sword thing bothered me that much because when they were fighting, they're doing that little training area. He was like, you have to go slow in order to pierce the thing. And
they don't use laser swords.
I'm sorry, I misspoke.
They use
the
actual blades
sword.
and knives, and they have the shielding.
It's kinetic energy. It's very similar to the Foundation shielding.
In the book, so what was one of the interesting differences between the Villeneuve version and the Lynch version is that in that scene where Gurney Halleck comes in and teaches Paul or does a training session with Paul in this movie, in the Lynch version, all three of the main kind of side characters, Gurney Halleck, Toofer Howat, and Dr. Yue. So all three of them come in at the same time, and they each have an interaction with Paul, and it sets up all three of these really important characters. Whereas in the Villeneuve version, only Gurney Halleck is kind of featured. And there's so much to it. For instance, in the book, they make it clear that when you're on defense, you're moving fast because you want the stuff to reflect off your shield. And then when you switch to offense, you move slow so that you can penetrate the shield. And it's just a line like that. It's would have taken them 2 seconds to put into the movie. They didn't do it.
Okay.
Also, I loved how they used the Toofer Howat, who's the guy whose eyes go white. But they don't set up what mentats are. They don't set up.
I had no idea what was going on.
Yeah, they don't set up the purpose of it. But also in the book, Toofer Howat, he is the spy master, the master of assassins. He's the guy who's if the Duke wants someone dead, he tells Thufir's hey, we need to take this guy out. And Thufir's I'm on it, boss. He's super dangerous in the book. And he's also got this really antagonistic relationship with Jessica in the book, which is really interesting because he doesn't trust Jessica because of her Bene Gesserit training.
He thinks that she's a witch.
Well, they kind of basically are.
Yeah, but he also knows that the Bene Gesserit.
BG.
The Bee Gees.
He knows that the Bee Gees are secretly behind the scenes manipulating stuff, and so he doesn't trust them.
It's true.
Yeah.
But they never touched on the Butlerian Jihad in the movie, which would have kind of set up a lot of stuff. So for those of you who haven't read the book, 10,000 years before the story of Dune, there was a big war between humanity and artificial intelligence. And it was called the Butlerian Jihad. And it was this war where basically all thinking machines were wiped out. And so by the time Dune happens, there are no computers. They're basically outlawed, they're forbidden, and that's why people use books and stuff like that, because they don't have computers. And one of the things is that mentats, which Toofer Howat is one of them, they're trained to be human computers. So they go through a very specialized training. And when they kind of reach their potential, they're able to store infinite amounts of information and also make incredibly complex calculations just in their mind. So when you see Toofer Howat's eyes go white in this movie, he's doing calculations. And he's basically the supercomputer for the House Atreides. They don't set any of that up. You don't know any of that stuff. He's also the master of assassins. He personally trained Paul, gave him mentat training, all types of stuff that this movie should have set up that they just didn't. And I feel like people who aren't familiar with the books are going to be very lost when it comes to this film in terms of the world building that it needed to set up.
So I'm not familiar with the books. My only familiarity with this is with the Lynch movie. I would have liked to have seen a lot of that stuff. I had questions about these characters, but I didn't know that their backgrounds were so deep.
Oh, there's huge amount.
That's what he just said.
Yeah.
Well, another thing is Dr. Yue. So in the books, when you see that kind of that diamond shaped tattoo, that means that person underwent imperial conditioning. And all healers, all doctors undergo imperial conditioning so that the people who employ them can trust that they're never going to betray them.
It's supposed to be impossible to break.
Yeah, it's imperial conditioning is basically the guarantee that the doctor is not going to do anything to harm you. That
he'll be loyal to you.
Yeah,
exactly the opposite of what happened.
Well, in the book, basically they set up very early on that Dr. Yue is the traitor. And then they talk about how his imperial conditioning was broken by the Harkonnens.
Which is supposed to be an impossible thing to do, which is why no one even thought that this could happen.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of a big deal. And they don't even...
The only thing that they say in the movie is that, like, they have my wife and kids or something like that. Like, I have to do this in order to save my family.
Yeah, but it was one of the reasons why UA could actually succeed in helping the Harkonnens take down the Atreides house, because nobody would ever suspect him because of the imperial conditioning. And that was like a big plot point in the book, where basically UA, his wife was, captured by the Harkonnens, and they broke his imperial conditioning. And then, so in order to rescue his wife, he had to betray the Atreides, and the Atreides never suspected him while they were on Arrakis.
And
because of that.
long after, Paul, and I don't want to get too far into the other part of the book, but long after this, when Paul and Jessica are in the desert and they're thought to be dead, everyone assumes that Jessica was responsible for the betrayal because she's a Bene Gesserit. She doesn't have imperial training. The thought that it would be Yui, no one even suspected it for a second. But in the book, Yui darts Leto, Duke Leto, to incapacitate him before he can get his shield up. And he confesses to him that he has to do this because he has to obey the
he does
Baron,
that in the movie.
but also that he hates the Baron. And it's just this very intense moment in the book where he's like, I have to, there's nothing I can do to get out of this, but I'm going to set it up so that we kill the Baron.
And
he does that in the movie.
Yeah. But I mean, like I said, there was a lot that was left out that I wish that they had put in. But I think they had.
In the book, the relationship between UA and Paul was actually much deeper because UA. So because of the fear of assassination, Paul didn't have any people his own age growing up to kind of play with and stuff like that. So his three companions were Gurney Halleck, Thufir Hewitt, whatever, and Dr. UA. And basically, UA was kind of like his tutor. He was the one who taught him about everything, religion, philosophy, all this stuff. And so they had a very close, trusting relationship. And so when UA betrays House Atreides, it's a big deal. And no one saw it coming. And one of my big complaints when we walked out the theater the first time after seeing this movie was that the betrayal was not very well set up in this. It just kind of happened.
Yeah.
And you were just like, oh, the doctor did it? Okay.
Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah. It wasn't, I wasn't oh my God, how could that happen? That's so terrible. We spent a minute and a half with the doctor.
Yeah.
We established that they are friends with Paul,
it was
and that was about it. So when that happened, I was like, oh shit, the doctor betrayed him. And then when he got the Duke down, he's like, listen, man, they got my wife. I'm sorry, but this is what's going to help us get through this. I'm going to give you this fake molar. When you're in there with him, bite down on it and breathe in his face, and it kills everybody in the room. That to me was okay, so he's doing this under duress. He doesn't want to do this, and he's trying to help mitigate the damage that's being caused. But I got all that. I don't know necessarily how much extra information we needed from that character. I was fine with it. I got it.
It wasn't set up to where I think
it's not going to hit you in the feels.
It didn't get the reaction out of me or I think anybody else that they probably wanted to get.
Yeah.
It was a betrayal, but it wasn't a devastating betrayal.
So, because we didn't know the character. We're just oh, okay, that guy.
But I did, so I got it.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but that's one of those things where if you're familiar with the book, a lot of this stuff makes sense that they skip over. You don't need to worry about that.
Yeah, but isn't this kind of where one of those movies where they need to ride that line between book readers and non-book readers?
I would actually argue that they needed to cater to the non-book readers more.
That's kind of what I'm trying to say, because and I don't think they did that very well.
I mean, there's a lot of stuff that was left out of this movie. For instance, the space travel. So in the book, they make it clear that space travel is about folding space, and there's this whole thing with this
Spice.
Navigators Guild or Spacers Guild. I forget which it's called, but basically, spice is the fuel that kind of runs the economy of the Galactic Empire. And they need it in order to fold space, in order to travel. And in the Lynch movie, they make a big deal of showing the process of space travel, of going from Caladan to Dune. Whereas in this movie, you never see that happen. You're just kind of you're in one place and then you're in the next, and you're like, how did they get there? Like I would have liked to have seen that, but they just cut it out for some reason.
Yeah, I was when I was watching this, I'm like, well, cool, we're gonna get to do see the space slugs take a hit of some spice, and then they're gonna get all weird and full of space. And, nope, none of that ever happened. We just see the giant, world destroyer looking thing from Star Trek up there.
I mean, it looked beautiful. Don't get me wrong, dude. When that freaking thing was in the sky and the way they had it shadowed and the way it was like designed, it was freaking gorgeous. But yes, I do completely agree with you. I'm like, I was watching this and I'm like, so are we actually gonna space travel? Because the thing, I did a little bit of research and I learned about the people in the universe who are like super mathematicians and stuff. And I'm like, the Mentats, and they're like, we had a battle against all AI. There's no more computers, and I'm like, so if they don't have computers, how are they traveling through space? Like, to me, that seems like an oxymoron.
That comes down to the Spacers Guild, like the navigators, the spice navigators, because they can't use computers. They need the spice to expand their consciousness in order to find ways to go from point A to point B. And like when you first see like that Herald of the Empire ship kind of land, and there are all these people, like Daft Punk comes out behind the people, like those are basically guild navigators.
Okay,
but they're not. The third tier navigator, which we saw in the Lynch movie, is like super mutated, and they can only exist in like a spice cloud. And the importance of spice wasn't really kind of, I think, communicated very well in this movie.
The importance of a lot of things weren't very well communicated.
Like one of the things I love about the book is they create this like very believable political structure that in the movie, and actually it's explained pretty well in Lynch's version. But in this version, it's completely glossed over. Like they talk about the Lancerat, and the Lancerat's basically like all the great houses of the Empire that come together. It's kind of like a House of Lords type thing from like the British Parliament, where all the great houses in the Empire basically have like this committee that they all sit on. And the House Atreides has gained a lot of popularity amongst the other houses, which is why the Empire or the Emperor sees them as a threat. And the Harkonnens had like a stranglehold on spice production, which made them like super wealthy, and it made them also made the other houses jealous of them. And so because House Atreides was the enemy of House Harkonnen, and I'm going to pronounce it Harkonnen because that's how I always pronounce it.
In my head, it's Harkonnen.
Yeah.
I think that's how it is in the Lynch version too, right?
It is.
Yeah, it is. So basically, because House Harkonnen has stranglehold on the spice and they're super wealthy, all the other houses are jealous of them. And so they gravitate to House Atreides because House Atreides has been feuding with House Harkonnen for years. And they're kind of like the Hatfield to the McCoys type thing. And basically in the book, there's this thing called the Chome Company. And Chome Company is basically like the Amazon of the galaxy, where they're in charge of the delivery of goods and services from all these different planets.
The Amazon Prime of the galaxy.
Well, pretty much.
Amazon Prime.
So like if your planet's like an agricultural planet, and you have lots of food. Basically, Chome is responsible for shipping that food to other planets, and it's all dependent on spice, because without spice you can't do interstellar travel.
Right.
They probably just have some planet out there called Bezos Prime. It's just a giant,
just a giant shipping
hub.
It's a planet shaped like a dick.
but basically, this is the biggest corporation in the galaxy, and the Emperor owns like a majority of the shares of it, which is where all of his power stems from. And when you gain control of Arrakis, you become a board member of Chome, and you get like a certain amount of shares and stuff like that. And so in the book, it's clear that the Atreides know that the Emperor is setting them up for a trap, but they go to Arrakis anyway because they're like, well, if we know it's a trap, we can anticipate the trap. And one of the things that the Emperor uses to keep his power is his Sodakar soldiers, which we see in this. And basically, Duke Atreides learns that there's this prison planet that the Emperor secretly uses as the training ground because it's so harsh that any soldier that survives is like the baddest of the badass. And when he learns about the Fremen on Dune, he's like, the only planet harsher than this prison planet where the Sodakar are trained is Dune. And if I can collect the Fremen and win them to my side, I can have an army that rivals the Sodakar. And basically I can challenge the Emperor, and we can survive this because we know the trap.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like his reasoning behind going there, because if he has the support of the Lancerat, if he has a stake in Chom and if he has an army that can rival the Emperor, then he can basically make a move against the Emperor eventually, or at least set up a marriage alliance between the Emperor's daughter, who's a big character in the book.
That was all in this. Everything that you're talking about, there was lines.
Briefly. Okay.
I mean, it was like sped up for the sake of the movie, but it was in there.
It was touched on.
It wasn't really relayed that
Okay.
way.
No, I completely disagree because I'm like listening to him say this. I'm like, yeah, I remember Oscar Isaac saying that. I remember them explaining this. I remember them saying desert power. We got to get these people on our side. It's the only way we're going to be able to fight the Emperor. We're talking about a marriage alliance. That was mentioned in this movie as well. Like everything that you're saying, yes, glossed over, I guess you could say, because it was very, very like quick dialogue that just went through. But if you're listening, they did set that up.
Okay. So one of the ways that Duke Atreides endears himself to the Fremen in the book, and they did it in the movie, but they didn't make a big deal out of it. And in the book, it's a huge fucking deal when he says, "Damn the spice, save the people." And Kynes is there, and Kynes is like, holy shit, you value life over spice? And that's what endears him to the Fremen and gets them to parlay with each other. And it's a huge deal because the Fremen don't trust anyone. They don't even want you to know like how many of us there are. And when he does that, then the Fremen are like, he's a good guy. Maybe we should trust him.
Yeah, it shows that he's different from the Harkonnens.
Exactly.
Because basically all the Fremen knew of the Empire were the Harkonnens. And they were like super brutal and super like just greedy and didn't care about life at all. It was all about the spice production.
Yeah. And the other thing that I wish that they had made a big deal out of, it's a very big deal in the book and it's a very big deal in this world, is like you talked about, like, this is the harshest planet anywhere. And like, yes, they said it was a desert planet and you need the still suits and it's very deadly, but like they did not hammer home how desolate this planet is. No one has water. Like there isn't water. There's none. And I just didn't feel like they made a big enough deal about like how deadly this planet is. And it's very well spelled out in the book.
That goes to one of my favorite scenes in this movie was when they did the parlay and Stilgar. He shows up and he spits on the table and everybody's like, what the hell? And he's like, Jason Momoa was like, no, guys, it's cool.
Yeah.
Thank you for giving us your water. Like that to me was like that little, hey, water is very, very valuable here.
Yeah, there's actually a scene in the book where basically once the Atreides kind of settle in the city on Dune, they have like this feast or this dinner where they invite like all the local kind of like lords and ladies and like people who represent the Fremen and stuff like that to the palace. And that's one of those scenes where Stilgar like spits on the floor and everyone's like, oh my goodness, it's so insulting. And it's like, no, in this culture, because water's so prized, when you use your body's moisture, when you expel it, that's like that's a sign of respect and stuff like that.
And then another thing in the book that happened in the movie, but they didn't make a big deal of it, and I really wish that they had, is that when Paul kills the Fremen,
at the end,
that's a big deal because when he does that, he cries, and the Fremen see that he gave his water in respect for the life that he took. And that is the thing that clinches them taking him in.
That does give it more context.
Yes.
Okay. That's pretty cool. But that was a dope fight scene though.
Yeah.
I'm going to dump some salt on this with you guys real quick. I love Hans Zimmer. His music is amazing.
It was a lot.
We talked about how like we could barely hear the dialogue because the freaking music was so loud. This movie, I think, had a little bit too much Zack Snyder in it with the slow-mo freaking epicness. It's like literally, I'm taking a shit. I'm walking down the hallway. And I'm like, oh my God.
Put more blood.
Yeah.
I need more blood.
Give me more.
Did you catch the throwback to the Lynch theme?
No, I did not.
Music?
No.
Did you see that, Matt?
I did not.
So I think it's the scene when they're first coming out of the ship after they crash and they've got their still suits on and they're climbing up on this rock and they overlook the desert vistas, right? And they play the theme song from
The David Lynch version?
David Lynch.
Did they?
Yeah, I'm almost positive they did that.
Huh.
I'll have to find it.
That's
but-
cool.
So first of all, bagpipes. I thought that was kind of weird.
I was like, what's up with that?
What's wrong with bagpipes, man?
Those bagpipes are great.
I mean, it was very out of place.
Yeah.
I realized that they shot Caladan in Scotland. Or Ireland, so it makes sense that they were like, "Oh, let's bring some of that Scottish
It was like
flavor."
somebody's cousin.
And they weren't like,
Dude, I'm
normal.
going to be in the Dune movie.
My
What are you
cousin
doing?
slays on the bagpipes, man.
They weren't normal bagpipes, right? Weren't they?
No, they were like spacey bagpipes.
Yeah, they were cool, but space pipes. They were space pipes.
pipes.
But it was still weird because it just sounded out of place.
I
To
didn't.
me.
I don't.
And
I
it
didn't-
looked out of place.
I
too.
disagree.
I thought it was cool.
I thought it was great. I had no problem with
But
it.
you know, the thing that really stuck out to me about this score was like, you know, when you have like the weird chanting going on,
Mm-hmm.
like there's like a rhythm to it. And when I was listening to it, my brain kept kind of like obsessing over it. It's like, where have I heard this before? And if you listen to Hans Zimmer's Wonder Woman theme,
I knew it.
it's the same.
Yes.
It's the same kind of like rhythm.
Yeah.
So like whenever the chanting happened in this movie, I just da da na 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 na, and I'm just like, oh man.
That doesn't surprise me at all.
No.
A lot of these.
Well, John Williams
composers-
does it all the time.
Yeah, a lot of these composers
Yeah.
they borrow from their other stuff too.
Yeah.
that's
I
their
actually
style.
thought the score for this movie wasn't very good. I did not like it.
I'd have to go back and listen to it. I didn't watch it 4 times, so I don't remember what it
didn't.
was.
Needed more
But,
cowbell and bagpipes.
but I will say it was as epic as the visuals, but I think they spaced that out a little
I
bit
I
too
think
much.
it overpowered
Yeah.
the dialogues.
Go ahead.
I don't recall having any issues with it.
I will say the thing that this movie did better than any other Dune adaptation ever has was Baron Harkonnen.
Yes. The Baron is very spooky, whereas in the David Lynch
He's like
version,
a
he's just
goofball.
gross.
Yeah.
He's
Yeah.
just icky. And in this, he's very intimidating.
What's the actor's name?
Stellan Skarsgård.
Skarsgård. Dude, that guy is freaking awesome. Like,
Listen, the Skarsgårds are made for. I think they were bred by the Bene Gesserit.
he was freaking so cool in this movie.
Yeah.
And I have no context for what this character was. I learned later because I did some research on it about how he became what he looks like. Like, I guess he was like a very fit, handsome man at one point in time. And then the Bene Gesserit like cursed him with a disease and he got like super huge. And now he has this, in the book, I think it's a belt, right? That makes him levitate. But in
I
this,
think
it's
it's
kind
called
of a harness.
suspenders or
yeah,
suspensors.
in
or
this movie,
something.
it's like in his spine
Yeah.
is how it works. But I was like, this freaking
But there
thing's
is
cool.
some great backstory to like how he came to be like so like
which
obese
will
and stuff.
spoil the next movie if we talk about it.
yeah, I mean, it does lead into a big spoiler.
Okay, all right, we'll save it then. But yeah, I thought Skarsgård did a freaking fantastic job with this character. I thought he was scary. I thought he was creepy, and he was also like menacingly intelligent. I really liked it.
I love the whole aesthetic of the Harkonnens. They're so different from the Atreides, but yet they just emanated
Creepy.
creepy,
Yeah.
evil grossness, but they were also very intimidating. You know, you could see why they are what they are.
Yeah.
You know, it was just, you know, Batista looked amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, he looked good, but that freaking armor was dope.
Because he was the costume was great and he was just jacked and you know.
He had the brain head.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's just his head.
Yeah.
But
We didn't
Nice to
even
see him
get.
without that big Baba Voss scar.
Yeah.
We didn't even get Sting's character in this movie.
No.
We just got Ravana, the Beast.
see, and that's the problem with this movie is it's like I said earlier, it's not complete.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's prologue, man. It's
set up.
it's all set up. Yeah, it's I find it really frustrating.
You
I'm
ain't gonna
sorry.
get that payoff till 4 years from now.
But there's a lot of things. It's a beautiful movie. It really is. It's gorgeous. There's no place in this movie where you can tell the difference between practical and
Yeah.
digital.
Miniatures and digital.
And
Yeah.
it's absolutely probably the most gorgeous movie I've ever seen in my life. It's amazing.
Did you guys notice that? So in the Lynch movie, all the Harkonnens have red hair, and in this movie, all the Harkonnens are bald.
Yes. Well, I noticed they were all bald. I didn't know the red hair thing, but now that you mentioned it,
And how about Polka Dot Man? Wasn't he great? in
yeah, it
this?
was awesome.
I didn't catch that until
Polka Dot,
You
the guy
told me
from
later.
Suicide Squad.
No, who?
Okay.
But who is he in this movie?
He's like the left hand.
He's the Harkonnen.
That guy right there.
That's Polka Dot
That's
Man?
Polka Dot Man.
Polka Dot Man.
Oh, okay, cool.
Anyway,
Yeah.
can we talk to Ben about the Bene Gesserit?
Yeah.
Bene
Bee Gees?
Gesserit?
The Bee
The Bee
Gees?
Gees, yeah. That was freaking badass. Like, I I did read this part of the book because I got to that point where she was like putting Paul to the test with the box of mystery or whatever.
I mean, that's like the opening chapter.
I know, that's how far I got. Anyway.
And I think that in the Lynch movie, it's an absurdly ridiculous scene. And I feel like this was done really well.
Oh, it was so
because you're
freaking
getting
cool.
all reaction.
Yeah, that one setup that we had at the breakfast table with his mom, and she's like, "Tell me to give you the glass."
Yeah.
And I was like, "What the fuck is she talking about?" Like, use the voice. I'm like, "What the hell's going on?" And then
It set up the voice nicely.
he tried it a little bit, and I was like, "Oh, that's cool. It's like a Jedi mind trick thing." And then when the freaking actual like Bene Gesserit witch did it, I was like, I jumped.
Yeah.
It was terrifying. She's like, "Come here," and I was like, "Holy shit!"
Get over it.
She went full, Scorpion. I thought that was a really, really cool setup, and I loved how it played into when they get kidnapped at the end of the movie, and how they're like trying to force these kidnappers to like let them go and shit. I thought that was freaking really well done. I loved it. I really set up. I'm like, ooh, I hope he freaking like turns into a full Jedi someday.
Oh, he's yeah.
In the book, Paul is he's more capable in the book than he is in the movie. In the movie, it just kind of seems like he's had this training and he's figuring it out. And by the end, he's going to become this badass.
Yeah.
Whereas in the book, he's like one of the best swordsmen ever. He also has Bene Gesserit training and Mentat training. He's a fucking badass.
Okay.
At the start of the book. And he's still training. So like by the time they get to the desert, like he's very capable.
Okay.
Yeah, and they also set up in the book how he's the product of like literally thousands of years of genetic breeding protocol by the Bene Gesserit. And he was supposed to be a girl, like because Jessica was ordered to have like a female heir.
Yeah, and that's the thing with the Bene Gesserit, because they're psychic, they can control their bodies and they can control when they get pregnant and what kind of a baby they have.
Oh, wow. I did not know that. That's crazy.
So she was instructed.
So that's why they were so pissed at her for having a boy?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. She was instructed to have a girl because they were going to breed that daughter with a Harkonnen and they were going to produce the Kwisatz Haderach. Whereas Jessica was like, I'm going to fucking do me because I love this man. And they didn't develop that relationship between Leto and Jessica enough in the movie either.
Yeah, like Jessica, like her official title is the royal concubine. Like she's not actually married to Duke Leto. She doesn't have like any actual power. She's just basically there as the as the BG advisor, and to like basically have sex with the Duke.
But they fall in love.
Yeah, they didn't.
I didn't get that at all.
I thought they were married.
Yeah, I did too. I thought she was like the princess or whatever.
There's even a line in this movie where he's like, "I should have married you."
Oh wow!
But they have big conversations about it in the book where he's like, "You should feel lucky that you're not married to me, so you don't have to go to these events and stuff like that."
I gotta go rewatch.
And
Yeah, I
she
need to
really
rewatch
wants, and she could force him to marry her, and she really wants him
Because they got pregnant?
No, because she can control.
Oh, the
him.
mind control thing. You're going to marry me. How
But
scary would that be?
and in the book, she's like, "I will never use my power."
Is that what you did to
against
Matt?
him." Yeah. I'm a redheaded witch.
Yeah.
She's a BG.
She's a BG.
Marry me now. Marry me now.
Listen, when this guy proposed, the first thing I said was, "What?"
That's awesome.
The second thing I said was, "Are you crazy?" Anyway, so she says, like, in the book, she's like, "I will never use my power against you. I will never force you to do anything. I do want you to marry me, but I want you to want to marry me." I mean, women have been a tale as old as time. There's like this whole thing because he's a politician and he's like, I have to keep myself open for a marriage alliance down the road. And then on his deathbed, he's thinking, you know, I wish I had married her. I should have married her.
Yeah, and speaking of the deathbed stuff, so like there's this whole thing in this movie about the Duke Leto's father, who was like the bullfighter. And we see all the symbolism of like, you know, a lone man fighting the bull. And it's kind of like a metaphor for what the Atreides are up against. And there's this bullhead in Caladan that they bring with them to Arrakis. And, you know, we keep seeing shots of this bullhead. And my assumption is that that's the bull that killed the grandfather. And so they had the head mounted. And Leto stares at this thing constantly throughout the movie as like a reminder of what he's up against and how death is constantly looming over him and stuff like that. And in the final scene where he's like lying there paralyzed, you know, naked at the Harkonnen's mercy, and the only thing he sees is that bull's head. And I feel like there was a lot of context that was cut out of this movie for that, because the symbolism is there. And I'm like, I see what Villeneuve is doing, but I wish that I really hope that there's like a 4.5 hour cut that comes out of,
Yeah.
of this
I don't think
movie.
you're gonna get
I
it.
will watch the shit out of that.
HBO Max 4.5 hour long cut is same thing as like the Zack Snyder
Yeah.
edition.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I'm in. I'd
Well,
watch
sure.
it.
Yeah.
I hope we get it.
I'd be freaking
Release the Villeneuve.
dope. Doesn't quite have the ring to it, does it?
Release the new.
The Denis Dune cut.
The PG's cut.
I have something I want to say that everybody seems to be avoiding
What's
Oh,
that?
hit it.
about this movie.
Is it the sandworms?
And well, there's very little of those in this, but I just have to say, and it haunted me through this whole movie.
Aw.
I'm very
Okay.
curious what you're going to say.
Jason Momoa
Oh.
cannot fucking shave his beard.
This is true. Like,
He
I
looks
know,
really weird being clean shaven.
yeah, like when he had his baby face on, I was like, no.
Who the hell was that guy? It's like,
That's freaking clean shaven,
I
baby.
know, that's
Yeah,
clean shaven Momoa does not work for me.
Well,
No?
at all.
well, you know what's funny is in the first scene that we see him, he's got like the Baba Voss
Yeah.
beard.
Yeah.
So it's obvious that like he shot that while he was doing C. But then like later on, when he shows up and he's got like the clean shaven face, I was like, his face looks weird.
I know,
he's got a big chin.
Yeah.
I don't know. I didn't mind it. I thought he looked cool.
I remember when he shaved his beard because he was posting it
Mm-hmm.
on Instagram and people were losing their mind.
Like,
Yeah.
who is that?
Yeah.
I remember that video too. He posted it on Instagram. Yeah, it was like, oh shit, he's freaking shaving his face. it always trips me out though, because I know how long it takes to grow a beard that's
I know.
freaking 4 feet long, and I'm like, how long ago did they make this movie?
Momoa can just force it though. He's just like,
It's gross. He's that badass.
Yeah.
No, I think he's a freaking handsome man. I think he looked great with or without. I'd rock.
I'll tell you one of the things that I did like about this movie. So like one of the things that I really enjoyed about the Lynch version was the inner monologues,
Yeah.
where like we actually hear what people are thinking. And I know like that annoys a lot of people who
I
watch the
hated
Lynch
that.
I really liked it.
but I enjoyed that, and they didn't do that in this movie. But one of the interesting things is that when Paul starts getting his dreams and he starts getting exposed to the spice and seeing like these visions, what we're seeing him do is we're watching him observe alternate versions of the future, stuff that could happen. And so like one of the things about Paul and him being the savior is that he eventually, I think it's called the Golden Path. He's exposed to the Golden Path, which is basically he sees every eventuality in the future, but the Golden Path is the thing that actually happens. And so as he's getting these visions throughout the movie, we're seeing like stuff where like, you know, he becomes friends with the guy that he ends up killing at the end of the movie and stuff like that. And it's all these like potential futures that are lying before him. And they never come out and say that that's what it is, but like, you know, as a book reader, I'm like, oh, okay, that's what they're doing here. So I found that kind of interesting. I liked how they did that.
So are they catering too much to the non-book reader in this movie? Or
No, I
or
think
the
they're
book
catering to
reader?
the book reader because they're leaving a lot out that we are not savvy to.
I think that they took for granted that most people probably read it or are familiar with the story, and they were like, they'll get it.
Yeah.
But like Matt said, like there's probably a lot that they cut out of the 4-hour, 6-hour version of this that explained a lot of that. I hope.
Okay.
And I really want to see that.
I do too. One of my other favorite scenes is when they're in like the little safety hut underneath the sand, and he's having that one-on-one with his mom. That their relationship with him, Paul and his mom, I thought was really well done.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it. I felt like they had a good connection throughout the entire movie. And I have a question for the book people here. The dope ass dragonfly ships. Is that a thing from the book?
Yeah, it's called the Ornithopters.
Yeah, those are great.
Those things are awesome,
They're
dude.
so cool.
I was
Yeah.
nerding out so much because I love, like, normally sci-fi shows would be like, oh, this is just what it is. Don't worry about how it works. This movie went out of its way to show the mechanics behind how it worked.
My brain was going, is that real?
I was freaking
Can they really
awesome.
make those things?
That
Because
is
I
so-
want one.
I want one
I
too.
remember that there are ornithopters, or however you say it, in the book. I don't remember the description of them at all, but visually, those things were dope.
That was freaking
Yeah.
super cool.
Yeah, and there were differences between the Harkonnen Ornithopters, which had like 6 wings, and then the Atreides, which only had 4 wings.
Huh.
I just, again,
Interesting.
that was cool. Okay, let's talk about
Sandworms.
sandworms and then Zendaya.
Okay.
Sandworms.
Okay.
Freaking, as far as I'm concerned, awesome.
It was everything I wanted it
Yeah,
to be.
the way the sand rippled when they were approaching, I was like, oh shit, that's freaking cool.
I think that if there's something that you were going to get right, this was the thing you needed to get right, and they did.
Yeah, finally technology has reached the point where they could sell it.
They're so cool.
They're so cool.
Those fucking fang
Yeah,
things.
dude, I love the fact that
They make knives
what are the
out of
people
those.
what are the people that live in this?
Fremen?
The Fremen.
They took the knives, and like these knives are like sacred because they came from the sandworms. That
Oh, that's something I want to talk about too, but please continue.
That whole plot line, that whole thing that was going on there, I loved it. I was like, that seems so real, and it really helped with the world building to me. So
Yeah. Okay. So the thing about the Chris knife
Yep.
that comes from the sandworm. So it's a much bigger deal in the book, and they didn't. I don't feel like they really followed through with that in this. Yes, they showed them, and yes, they're like very powerful knives. But the thing about the Chris knife in the book is that you cannot unsheath it without blooding it. And there is a scene where everybody like cuts themselves and then puts it back.
Oh.
You're not supposed to put your knife back without blooding it. So if you unsheath your knife, you better mean fucking business.
I didn't know that. That's kind of weird because they did show it once, but it was because somebody died or something like that, right? It wasn't. I don't know, because don't they take their knives out? They take their knives out a bunch, don't they?
Yes, they do, which annoyed me. Like when Meeps gives her the knife. And that's a big thing in the book too, because it's like a test. And Meeps is giving it to Jessica, and Jessica takes it and says, I know that, we have to blood this knife. And Meeps is like, oh shit, you are the shit, And it's a big thing in the book because that Jessica is technically part of this prophecy. And it's a test because the Fremen are like, is this really her? And so when she gives her the knife, and Jessica knows that according to the Fremen, I can't sheath this until I've bled it. And that like solidifies that she is part of this prophecy.
Yeah. And in the book, the Bee Gees, basically they've spent decades seeding mythology on Dune to prepare them.
Yeah, they've created this prophecy centuries
It's
ago.
like self-fulfilling.
As a way to manipulate the Fremen.
Yes.
Whoa. That's like 4D chess.
They're playing that long game.
Wow.
Yeah, like there's so many layers to the book that were very glossed over in this movie that needed to be there, in my opinion, which is why, like when I left the theater, first of all, I agree with Vader in the sense that this needed to be a full story.
Yeah.
And for all the faults of Lynch's version of Dune, it told the full story, which I loved.
Yeah, but if you want to kill yourself at the end of it, is it worth it?
Well, I love Lynch, so. But there's so many layers to the story that needed to be in the movie that I really wish that they had just turned this into a mini series.
Yeah.
Because at the end of this movie, like it's not a complete story. It kind of just ends, and it's unfulfilling when you walk out of the theater because you're like, I wanted to see more.
Yeah.
And I just feel like this movie, kind of as beautiful as it is, did a real disservice to the source material because you can tell that they wanted to dive into it and be very faithful, but they just didn't. They cut so much stuff out because they had to meet this runtime.
Yeah.
And it really needed to be a story that did not have those runtime limitations.
Yeah, I enjoyed it, but I wanted it to be epic.
So let me put it to you this way. Watching the David Lynch movie did not make me want to go read the book.
Okay.
Watching this movie makes me want to go read the book. That's the difference for me. Somebody coming in blind going, wow, this is freaking dope. There's a lot of backstory here that I want to learn about. I'm going to go learn about it.
Yeah, you know what's funny is so the Lynch movie was my first exposure to Dune. Like I didn't know anything about Dune until I had seen the David Lynch version of the film. And then I went and read the book. And, when I was reading the book, I was seeing the Lynch visuals in my head. And you can tell like his weird effed up version of Dune inspired this movie as well. Like just the design of things. And the thing I love about Lynch's Dune is that it is weird, right? It's so imaginative compared to other science fiction at the time. And I don't know, like I've always been a big fan of David Lynch. I think that like his stuff is just, it makes you think, and it's so imaginative and different that to me, like his version of Dune was just the definitive version of it for me.
Wow. That dude gives me the creeps.
I think
He's a wackadoodle.
I think that movie had some influence on this movie too, though.
Yeah, I think
definitely.
there's definitely some visual cues that they took.
There's some Easter eggs and some throwbacks in there.
But anyway, all right, let's do final
Are we
thoughts.
going to talk about Zendaya?
What is there to talk about? She's barely
She
in
barely in this. I was going to say stunt casting.
They Luke Skywalker this, man. she's in a couple of flashbacks and
like one scene,
and then at the very end with the fight, and that's it. I think
she only has like what, 2 lines?
I think she's in the movie a total of 7 minutes.
All I remember her saying is, "I wouldn't have let you kill my friends."
Yeah, something like that. And I think she said she's a good fighter.
She was the opening narrator, for the movie.
Oh,
and it was kind of weird that because in the book and in Lynch's version, the Emperor's daughter is the one who's kind of like telling the story.
Yeah,
because it's like all this stuff already happened. She's
it's like journaled.
Kind of writing. Yeah, she's writing a journal about it. So
I think that's how Lynch's version is too.
Yeah. Although I don't think that was his choice. I think that was the studio's choice.
Are we ever going to get to see the Emperor?
Well, it was interesting that they never showed the Emperor in this part of the movie, but I'm hoping that they show him at the end because he has a part to play in the climax of the.
Because I want to see the Emperor, and I really want to see their take on the mutant space folders. The what do they call them?
The Guild Navigators.
The Guild Navigators, because they're like the weirdest part of the Lynch movie. They're weird, man.
Like the Spacing Guild, the the Bee Gees, and the Mentats are like the 3 major kind of organizations within the Dune universe, and hardly any of them are touched on in this movie.
Yeah.
All right, final thoughts, man. Give it a rating, or can you?
I don't know if I can. I mean, I guess I'd give it a solid 5 on technical issues for just a beautiful visual movie. But for the story, I got to give it a to be determined. I just can't give it a score. Okay. So yeah, I mean,
score part 1.
To be determined after part 2.
Okay, so 5 years. Tune in 5 years from now.
This is my score.
I hate that, but I mean, I enjoyed what I saw. I thought they missed a lot of stuff as far as explaining a few things like we've been talking about.
Yeah.
But it's an incomplete movie. I need to see the whole thing.
Okay.
But it's gorgeous.
All right.
I mean, that's all I got.
Jude, how about you? Final thoughts, give it a rating.
I was very happy with it. And I was afraid that I was going to feel the way about this that I did about Foundation. Yeah. So the amount of relief in my body is enormous.
Okay.
Yeah, there was a lot that I wished had been in it, which I hope I get in the 6-hour version that comes out next year. Wink, wink. But overall, I had a giant smile on my face the whole movie. I was very happy and just eating it up. Okay. So I really enjoyed it. For me, like Vader said, it's not a finished story, and there was just so much left out that I want more. So it's a 4 sandworms out of 5.
Okay, 4. That's pretty.
And
high.
That's a lot of sandworms.
Yeah, that's a lot of sandworms. Kadish, how about you, bud?
So this isn't a bad movie, but it falls short of what it should have been, in my opinion. It feels like half of a film because it is half of a film. It doesn't tell a complete story. It doesn't stand on its own, which I think is a big problem. It's choppy. Yes. A lot of necessary world building was cut out in order to meet this runtime. Technically, it's gorgeous. It's beautiful. The acting was all on par, spot on. The casting was great. The direction was great. Everything about this movie works on a technical level, but on a story level, I feel like it falls short. It's not a great adaptation. It's just okay. So I give it a solid 3 body moistures out of 5.
3 spits on the table.
Yeah, 3 spits on the table out of 5 because while it's not what it could be, it's still pretty good. So I really hope that we get the sequel in a reasonable amount of time, but also they're doing a spin-off TV show about the Bee Gees on HBO Max that they announced years ago. And so we can expect, hopefully in the interim, between movies 1 and 2, we get this, and it's kind of going to be a prequel from what I understand.
That's interesting. I'll devour that.
Yeah, I think a lot of it has to do with Leto's father and his rivalry with the Harkonnens and the BG truthsayer to the Emperor. Mm-hmm. So we're going to get to see a lot of
Reverend Mother?
The Reverend Mother.
Okay.
We're going to get to see what happened between her and the Harkonnens and all that stuff. So that's kind of what I'm hearing, but I don't know for sure. They've been really stingy with the details on that. But they're going to have a TV series in between the two.
Shrouded in mystery.
I hope it looks as good as this freaking show. I had a ton of fun with this movie when I saw it in theaters. I've only seen it once. I didn't. This is stupid of me, but I didn't realize it was on HBO Max already.
You fool.
Yeah, exactly. I thought they were going to do like the 2-week thing. They did that with another movie. It was out in theaters for like 2 weeks, and then they dropped it on HBO Max. I thought that's what was going to happen. I would have watched this a couple more times before talking about it if I would have known I could have. But I enjoyed the hell out of it when I was in the theaters. Going in, not knowing all these details that you guys are talking about, those details are awesome. But I didn't feel like I was missing anything. There was stuff that was going on where I was like, okay, that's pretty cool. That's very sci-fi-ish. All right, I'm just going along with the story. Didn't bother me that they didn't like flush every detail out. It's easy 3.5, if not 4. I don't know why I'm not giving it a 4. Maybe it's just a 4. Fuck it. Yeah, it's a 4.
I'm going to say something super nerdy to you.
Yeah, go ahead.
I know that you had a hard time getting through the book, but I made a book report after I read the book because I didn't want to forget any details. So if you want to just read my book report,
can I get the cliff notes?
It's the cliff notes
Nice.
of the book.
Okay, cool. But I do want to explore it now. I have the book on Audible. It's in my library already. I'm gonna go listen to it.
Let me know how that is.
It's not great.
Really?
Yeah, the narrator's kind of bland.
Okay.
Which is what I think was causing the issue for me not to get through it. But
you just read it.
I could do that. I could put my own voice in it. Maybe I'll read it to my kids. I don't know. Who knows? It'd be weird. She's got a book report. Anyway, I had a ton of fun. I thought it was really well done, and I think I'm in for the next part. It makes me want to go watch it.
100%.
I'm like, I'm not like, oh, whatever. I don't need to see part 2 because I didn't like this one. No, it's like, hell yeah, I can't wait for that.
I can't wait.
Yeah. Which I think part 2 is probably going to make a shit ton more money than
I
this
can't
one
wait to watch this and part 2 together.
That would be dope.
Yeah, to get a whole movie.
To get an actual movie.
Yeah.
That's right.
We'll have a popcorn night here.
I'm down. 6 hours of Dune.
Like we don't spend enough time together.
We don't spend enough time. Yeah. All right, everybody. That's it. That's our spoiler review for the new 2021 Dune. What did you think? Leave a comment below. Let us know. And Matt Vader, where can they find you on the socials, bud?
You can find me at MattVader74 on Twitter, YouTube, and Instagram.
Jude, where can they find you?
You can find me at I am Juju on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok.
And Matthew Kadish.
You can find me at Matthew Kadish, Kadish on Twitter, and kadishbooks.com will take you to my Amazon page.
And
sorry.
No, go ahead.
Check us out on Facebook. We got a Facebook group over there.
Yeah.
Cool. And I'm your host, Alex, Salty Nerd. You can catch me on our Discord app. Go to saltynerddiscord.com and join the community over there. We have a ton of fun. It's a fantastic place to hang out and talk about nerdy stuff. And if you want to support us, go to saltynerdclub.com, become a club member. You get exclusive access to a ton of extra content. So please help support us and help us do this full time. All right, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us. Go enjoy this movie on HBO Max and go to the theater, support your local theaters. And as always, stay salty, my friends.